Great. So our topic, as you can see, is how innovators discover new dimensions of decentralized solutions. The gentlemen here are all innovators in their own right. I'm going to leave it for the gentlemen to introduce themselves. If you could start off with you.
Hi, I'm Eddy Travia. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coinsilium. We've been investing in this space since 2013, and we're listed on a growth market in London called Next Exchange.
David, over to you.
Hi, I'm David Schwartz. I'm Chief Cryptographer at Ripple. We are using a digital asset, XRP, to remove friction in global payments.
Hello, everyone. My name is Duan. It's lovely to be here to see all of you. I work at SelfSell, taking care of the business collaboration and market extension. SelfSell basically is an investment platform listing people, individuals' value as crypto assets.
Hi, my name is Zhang, and I'm a co-founder of the Aurora chain. And Aurora chain is a public chain. So now we list on the main chain and to compete with Ethereum and US.
Hi, my name is Steve Safronov. I'm a partner at a company called Byteball. We are a new sort of generation of blockchain, which is called DAG.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with you, and I think the first question is, you said you've been investing in this space since 2013. Mm-hmm. Give us an idea of your investment thesis today, and how it's different from what it was in 2013.
Sure. So when I started, blockchain was not the buzzword. The buzzword was Bitcoin. And so basically, our initial investment thesis was, let's help the ecosystem grow. So we were investing in what we call transactional type businesses, like exchanges, wallets, remittance plays. And then that evolved 2014, 15, where blockchain technology, the technology became the buzzword out there. And so we started looking at platforms. We invested in platforms like Factom, like RSK. We were the first investor in RSK, which was called Rootstock at the time. So it has changed from, let's say, transactional to these new platforms and smart contracts and IoT. And so it's obviously much broader today. And of course, now with the ICO wave, we see all these creative applications, popping up every day.
So we have a wave of platforms that are coming up. You've got Ethereum, which is doing 15 transactions per second. And then you've got a wave of these platforms that are coming up that are promising to solve the scalability problems. Are you investing in this wave of new platforms?
So yeah, we're looking at it very closely. I'm an advisor on Phantom, which is a recent project, a DAG-based project, which intends to solve these kind of issues like scalability. And of course, RSK as well is looking at that and proposing some solutions. So yeah, we're definitely, platform is great because you can build so many applications on top of this, right? So it's always very exciting for investors as well.
So I think full disclosure, I'm also an advisor on the Phantom project.
Okay, good.
David, over to you. Now, if you read over there, it says how innovators discover new dimensions of decentralized solutions. Now, Ripple is always criticized as being very centralized. Is it centralized?
I don't think so. I think that's a buzzword that people sort of define to create a criterion that their favorite project sort of passes and the projects that they like less fail. I think that when people want a system that's decentralized, what they want is they want a guarantee that the system will treat everybody fairly, that there isn't somebody who can arbitrarily change the rules, that the system will behave the same next year as it does today. And if you look at the system that we developed, if you look at the XRP ledger's mechanics, it provides all of those assurances. It does it in a somewhat different way than Bitcoin does, but it provides those exact same assurances. And it's not vulnerable to problems like a majority attack. It has a higher transaction rate. For the use case that we're targeting, for settling international payments, for sort of being a connector between different assets, it meets the requirements of the use case.
How do you solve the problem of decentralization with a centralized entity? What mechanisms are in place to make the XRP token and the Ripple system decentralized?
Well, part of it is there's a separation between Ripple, the company, and the XRP ledger, the sort of decentralized transaction processing system. We've carefully designed that token, that processing system, that ledger, so that it doesn't have administrative functions. Just like Bitcoin, every node verifies every single transaction. You don't need anybody else to tell you if a transaction is valid. If you look at the technology, the only problem that you can't trivially solve in a fully decentralized way, there's only one. Like every problem that you can imagine is trivial to fully solve in a decentralized way, but one. And that problem is, what do you do if you receive two valid transactions that conflict at about the same time? That's the only, what do we need mining for? Well, it does the distribution of the asset, but if we didn't need it for the distribution of the asset, the only reason we would need it is to solve the double spend problem. And so we have a way of solving that problem that people can argue is not, it doesn't have the properties that they like from Bitcoin, but it doesn't cost millions of dollars a day. It can handle more than 1,000 transactions per second instead of, maybe a couple of hundred. The advantage is just significantly outweighed the disadvantages for our use case. Does that mean it's the best store of value token? Maybe not.
Okay, before I move on to Ran, I've got one more question for you, and it's something that I need to get clarified. The XRP token. Today, what is the use case for an XRP token?
Well, there are a lot of entities pursuing different use cases for it. Like putting my Ripple employee hat on, Ripple sees XRP as a settlement asset for international cross-currency payments. So the idea is that if you're making a payment, let's say from the United States to Mexico, instead of having to use a correspondent banking system or instead of having to leave Mexican pesos in a Mexican bank somewhere until you need them, you would basically just buy XRP and sell XRP in a very short amount of time, let's say within a minute. And you would be able to accomplish that international payment without those expenses, costs, and delays. Other people are using the XRP ledger for other purposes. One thing that I'm seeing a lot more of is because we can achieve transaction certainty in just a couple of seconds, like 5 or 6, it's a good way to move value between one exchange and another. Kind of the same function that Tether does, but for a lot of reasons that are probably very obvious. A lot of people don't want to use Tether for that purpose. XRP is an incredibly good way to do that. And we have a decentralized exchange built into the ledger. We built it in 2013, and it's been live since then, and people are using that. So other people have found other use cases.
Great. Ran, if you can tell us a little bit about what SelfSell actually does.
As I just said, SelfSell it's an investment platform listing people's value, rather than Bitcoin on the platform. So I think it's a very interesting project. We believe all men are equal, so we want to give the whole society the equal right to issue their own token, a personal token of yourself, to raise funds, to get the resources you need. And very interesting, we just launched a personal token of a star, James Rodriguez, the Bayern Munich midfielder, his personal token on our platform. So we believe with a token under his name, his fans can have better and more ways to interact with with their idol, online and offline. Actually, during the discussion with James and his team, we have designed a series of activities to interact with fans more and better than the traditional ways. We believe, yeah.
Bo, do you want to introduce your company and give us a little bit more detail about what your company does?
Sure. So, and Aurora, and and as we all know, and last year, and Ethereum is blocked, and after and the CryptoKitties and issued on the Ethereum. So at that time, and our team and are trying to thinking and how to solve the problem of the traffic. So now we have a new chain and a main chain and Aurora because we think that and the high speed of the TPS and is the only way and to make and all the industry to integrate with and the blockchain. So and Aurora and offer and with a high speed smart contract. And also, we are linking with the more traditional industry with blockchain because we would like to more industry to enjoy the benefits of blockchain. Because we bring 6 new ideas and how to improve blockchain technology. So as we all know nowadays, there is no any one blockchain can be upgradable. So we take the idea. And we have a technology to solve this problem that can be upgradable. So now, and we also want to invest and own different projects to move from Ethereum to us. Okay, that's all.
Steve, Byteball, give us the 1 minute pitch on Byteball.
Thank you. We're a 1.5 year old company. We looked at blockchain and discovered that it's a great technology. We really fell in love with it, but we also discovered that there are a couple things that need to be changed. One of them is blocks, and the other one is kind of philosophical things that we need to give the freedom to the person to post the transaction. With blocks, you have wait in line, pay the fee, and then, if you're lucky, it goes through. With the technology that we use called DAG, Direct Cyclograph, you're free to post the transactions. And obviously, the other benefits come with that. The speed and the cost of the transaction. The cost of the transaction is a fraction of a penny. And the speed, obviously, the bigger the community, the higher the speed of the transaction.
What about security?
We looked at the existing system, proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of work, as I have described miners, obviously there are a lot of drawbacks, and we decided to skip that. Proof of work, there is also one risk there in the system. For example, if I have platform on my platform native coin, and I've got altcoin which is raising in value, and mine is dropping to almost zero, so I'll be tempted to maybe do something with the altcoin to compensate my existing value. So we currently we're centralized, but by the end of summer, we're going to deploy 12 witnesses around the world. These are the organizations. They got very high reputation, and they will not play around with their reputation in order to fix certain transactions.
Great. Thank you very much. So I want to get into the actual topic which we're discussing, which is the discovering of new dimensions in decentralized solutions. And specifically, if I could ask you guys to give me a very short answer in terms of what you think the main ingredients or the main factors are that allow you to discover these new dimensions. What do we need? Over to you.
It's interesting because this title, at first I found it a bit esoteric, right? And then I realized it makes you think about it, which is a great thing. I think the first element you need is to be in this space and to have a reflection about what is needed and what can be done, right? I think protocols and the innovators who create the new protocols are very important, because a protocol is actually, for me, a path that can be followed by not only a community, of course, but of course also a pool of developers or a community of developers, and they're going to build a lot of applications. They're going to, of course, as we know, fork it and and do their own modifications, amendments, and their own take on it. So I think protocols are very important in terms of the ingredients. Well, you need obviously tech know-how. You need tech know-how. In this space, a lot of people are calling out a lot of projects in the ICO world. And one of the simplest way for us to find good projects is to look at the team and have these guys been in this industry for a while, because you need to live and breathe it and make mistakes and fail, and then you get there. So I think for me the first ingredient in this space is the team and the tech know-how of the team. So
David, over to you. The mindset of the team. I mean, you work on a team that is discovering new dimensions. Tell me a little bit about the mindset of the team. How do you instill that pioneering, try new things mindset?
I think it's exactly that sort of spirit. The way we got into this is because of Bitcoin. I mean, everybody saw Bitcoin and they said, hey, this does some fantastic things. This has some properties that we really like. This is awesome. And then if you have that sort of engineer's mind, that sort of like entrepreneur, tinkerer kind of thing, what you do is you take it apart and you look at the pieces and you say, well, how does this get the properties that I like? And then you start thinking, like, what are the other ways to get those same properties so that I can build systems that have maybe different combinations of advantages and disadvantages? I think a critical thing is that it's not a sort of one-dimensional, let's make it better. There's certainly some of that, but it's a sort of multi-dimensional, what are people trying to do with this? How can we make it more suitable to those particular use cases? How can we target something specific? And I would like to point out one surprising insight, which is to make a decentralized system, the requirements on the tech, everybody seems to think that like that puts these incredible pressures on the tech. It turns out that the key thing to make a system decentralized is just there doesn't have to be anybody who has the ability to push other people around. If nobody can control what code I run on my computer and I verify every transaction and there's nobody who can say, no, you must, no one holds a patent, no one has some secret intellectual property, no one has like the legal right to run the system, then you can build a system that will do what its majority of users want because there's just nothing to stop them.
So with that in mind, with saying that you look at existing solutions and you take them apart, you analyze them, what's the future of Bitcoin? Everyone saw Bitcoin as this decentralization proof of concept, this consensus mechanism proof of concept. And many have taken it apart and critted the proof of work mining algorithm. They've critted many other parts of Bitcoin. Does that make Bitcoin, does it leave Bitcoin at the risk of becoming obsolete in a few years?
I guess that Bitcoin has to find a use case. So at one point, the use case was peer-to-peer payments, and I'm sure if you know about the controversy between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, there was a war over whether
What
Bitcoin...
controversy?
So right, there was a question of like, well, has Bitcoin abandoned every use case it's ever had, and now it's a store of value, and there's some question over whether that's a legitimate use case. I think Bitcoin could become, it's possible that one way that this could play out is Bitcoin becomes irrelevant as a project because it doesn't have a use case, or it's technologically superior tokens and systems like take over every use case. But it's also possible that this store of value vision, it could become like a dominant global store of value, or it could find some other use case. It's very hard to predict those sort of small level details just because we don't know how Bitcoin is going to evolve. But I don't think anybody would have predicted that it would have abandoned its sort of peer-to-peer digital cash model as it sort of seems to. If Lightning Network is successful, then that changes everything. If Lightning Network delivers on the vision that people have for it, and I don't know whether it will or won't, I don't have a crystal ball, but if Bitcoin can keep its store of value internals and Lightning Network can deliver on higher level scalability and it can become peer-to-peer digital cash, I mean, that sounds like a good use case to me.
Ran, I'm going to look at you. You're Chinese, yeah? There's a lot of legislation in China around cryptocurrencies, or there's one rule around cryptocurrencies, and that's that there's no cryptocurrencies. How does legislation hamper you from finding new dimensions?
Right. You know, cryptocurrency, blockchain is huge in China, as everywhere in the world. You know, as my background is internet, I think the blockchain industry today is pretty much the internet industry before. In the late 1990s, I was talking about it in China, in Europe, everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone's, you know, the blockchain industry is attracting great attention and money, but I think we are at a very interesting and critical moment. It's critical for the whole industry to produce some solid applications with real value and real scenarios. So I think you know about decentralization. Of course, people would like to will have more involvement, will have better motivation in the whole system. So I think the near future will be pretty much like the combination of centralization and the decentralized solutions.
Bo, what do you think are the main factors that allow you personally to break new dimensions?
While we're talking about blockchain and the innovators, and so firstly, I would like to define who are the innovators in the blockchain industry. So all of us, and both of you, because and each of us and other contributors to the blockchain. So, and while we're talking about decentralized solutions, firstly, and we need to think why and we need to move from centralized solution to decentralized solutions. To imagine each day while you go to the supermarket, if you buy anything in the supermarket and you need to pay by credit card, but there is the intermediary. So here and now, maybe we are sticking because and the intermediary and charged a lot of the money from us. So maybe and one day and we need to think about there's no intermediary, so we can too have the peer-to-peer. So this is just one of the imagination and one of the scenarios for the blockchain from centralized to decentralized.
So I want to pick up on that point, and I think that takes us to our next topic. And Steve, I'm going to let you be the first one to talk about this next topic. We're a movement for decentralization. Everything we do, the first question that we ask is, are we decentralized? Do consumers, the man in the street, do they want things to be decentralized? And I'll give you some context. My mother will never ever use Bitcoin because she doesn't want to remember her private key and she doesn't want to manage her own cash. And she's willing to pay intermediaries to do all of that for her. Do you think we're trying to decentralize too many things?
Of course not.
Let's pass it to Steve because he needs to have his say.
Yes. First of all, I want to step back and say a couple of words about Bitcoin. I think history repeats itself. So Bitcoin, like it was in ancient ages, is a gold, but it's a digital gold. Whenever we fail in this technology, I think all the value goes back to digital gold, which is Bitcoin. So it's sort of a backup, and it's good. It's good to have it as an alternative to gold. Now, about, are we talking too much about decentralization? We don't know. I think the key driver in this is the economy. As soon as we see that the economy accepts what we're doing, then obviously it will be spread all over. And for example, for Byteball, the main focus is to make it economically viable, to reduce the cost and to increase the adoption, to make it kind of a bridge from crypto community to real economy.
There's a law that says that in a decentralized economy, people will centralize around the most popular nodes or the most popular services. Are we not trading one form of centralization for another form of centralization? Ed, I'm looking at you. Eddy, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I think, so to go back quickly to your first question about people caring, I don't think people care. I mean, if you look at, maybe it's unfortunate, but it's like this. If you look at the institutions that people still trust the most, and it's still banks, for example, and this is the ultimate centralized kind of institution, and despite everything that happened, right? So we are, of course, in a space where we're looking for new solutions, new answers, and we have a reflection about the whole system, monetary, etc. And so we're looking at decentralization as one of the solutions. But I think, in general, if we talk about general public, they probably don't care at this moment. And in terms of your question about decentralized going to centralized, I mean, if we look at the market of cryptocurrencies, that's what has happened already. I mean, a lot of the services that we use in the crypto world are centralized services, exchanges, etc. And of course, in mining, we all know that there are some large pools. So it doesn't take away from, I would say, the ideology. You know, people still looking for decentralized solutions. But in practice, there is this tendency, yes, to go back to central brands, central places of trust.
Well, there's no difference between JP Morgan and Binance today. They're both centralized. They both charge whatever fees they want. Just one trades decentralized assets and one trades centralized assets. But we are centralizing around a centralized company. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And I think that there will always be a market for centralized services for people who want the benefits of having somebody else to take responsibility for things that just, it's maybe tedious for them to take responsibility for. But I don't want that to be seen as fatalistic or as like, oh, there's no point then, we're just going to reinvent centralization. If we can reinvent centralized businesses and services on top of decentralized assets and decentralized exchange models, That's a much more open platform. That may not be the vision that the idealist vision of completely decentralized everything, but that is an awful lot better. If you look at what people don't like about centralized systems, it's the fact that you're trapped in those systems. You can't easily move between systems. You can't interoperate with people in other systems. If I have freedom of choice between a bunch of centralized systems and some decentralized systems that may be harder to use, but if they all interoperate, I would say that's a huge victory. I would say we could all, pat ourselves on the back and go on to do something else. That would be so much better than the situation in money movement today.
So I want to...
Sorry, just to rebound, I agree, but at the same time, a key part of what you said is harder to use. And I think, you generally in this space, we have been educated, we have been self-educated about using all these new tools, and of course, cryptography, and you were mentioning private keys. But that's still the issue today, is that we need the public to move to tools where there is not this very steep learning curve.
Yeah. So I agree with that.
I think for 2 years, or since the beginning of 2017, we've been hearing about public adoption or public usage of blockchain. And 2017, we said before there is public usage of blockchain, we've got to achieve scalability. We've almost achieved scalability. What else do we need to get the public to really join us on this blockchain journey, to start using cryptocurrencies day to day, and to help us move the public into these new dimensions? Ran, over to you.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about this with one example. The World Cup is coming. So just imagine how can we traditionally interact to interact and support the team, the club, the player we are supporting. What I can imagine is just to buy the match ticket, which is very expensive, to buy the team jersey. So there are several limited ways, but I think with a token in the system, the fans can have more ways to interact with the fans, because you are not only the users, they are also the token holders.
So I understand that there are multiple benefits to using a token. That's not my question.
Yeah.
My question is, what are we going to do as a collective? What do we in this room need to do to get the general public to start using cryptocurrency? And to be able, because as good as your token sounds, and your concept really does sound amazing, I don't know if the public are going to use it. And if they do, I don't think a big part of the public are going to use it. And the question is, what do we need to do to get cryptocurrencies more mainstream and day-to-day, not used by speculators, but used for people for real use case? I ran an exercise the other day, and I correlated the move in the Bitcoin price to the number of transactions on the Bitcoin network. Surprise, surprise, the correlation is almost 1-to-1, which means that today, the biggest cryptocurrency out there is purely a speculative asset with very little use case. Now, if we continue to run an industry where all there is to the assets is speculation, we don't have an industry anymore. And I think the question is, let's put the bullshit aside, let's put the hype aside, let's put this talk about we're solving our problems aside and say, what do we need to do to get the public to start using cryptocurrency instead of using money, and using utility tokens instead of paying centralized service providers in fiat? Who wants to tackle that?
Yeah, I think that's a really big topic. Yeah, we should be discussing and doing for a long time. I think what we are doing now, what we are trying to do now, is to build a new ecosystem based on value. So everybody in the system with the usage of token, people can both create and benefit from the system, like. With the usage of token, people, there are a lot of activities, real scenarios to encourage, like not just the players, the fans, everybody, media, sponsors, to participate.
So with respect, I hear you, but I want to ask a question to the audience. How many of you trade on Binance? If you could put your hands up. How many of you use the Binance token to pay for your fees?
I use it.
1, 2, 3. This is a problem. This is a problem because we created this thing called a utility token on the blockchain, but very few people are actually using it. And again, I'm throwing my question out into the panelists to say that if we're going to go into a new dimension of decentralized solutions, we need people to start using it. What do we need to do as an industry, as a bunch of people in this room, to get people to start using more utility tokens and more cryptocurrencies?
So I don't think anyone's going to have one satisfying answer to that question. I think that we could argue about different solutions to that. I can tell you a couple of ways those kinds of things could happen, and whether or not that's the way they will happen, it's very hard to say, but they're interesting avenues to pursue. One of them is just building products that have better user experiences, building products that are really easy to use, really intuitive, at scale, supporting them. That's really hard to do. Lots of companies are trying to do that. Another thing is kind of to sort of hide the cryptocurrencies in the plumbing so that the user isn't even aware of that's what's happening. So like one vision of that might be, you might go to a web page in your browser, and you might be paying with a cryptocurrency to have no ads because that's a built-in function of your browser. And the web page might be paying for its hosting, or it might be paying a news database to get some information about like what articles you've already seen so it can give you new things that are of interest to you. Like it could just be so in the background that everybody is using it without even knowing that they're using it. It could also happen from the top down. So you can imagine if big enterprises start using these cryptocurrencies, then they'll become more attractive because there'll be more liquidity, they'll be more available, and so they'll start getting sort of absorbed into like your bank might start using a cryptocurrency, and so you're using it indirectly. But I don't have a crystal ball, and so I can't give you a satisfying answer that this is the exact one way that's going to happen. You'll notice the company that I work for doesn't have any retail products. Ripple is technically, it's not a retail brand. We're not targeting consumers with some product precisely because I don't think we know how to do that yet, and I don't know that anybody does.
Yeah, I agree with the ease of use. And I think we have to also be careful about premature adoption in a way, in the sense that, for anyone who has been in this space for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, we all know that at one point we get burned, we lose a key, we lose tokens, etc. And that's not something that everyone is ready to do, or everyone would accept it. So we had a bit of the flip side of that, is that if you come early in this industry and you don't know how to use it, and you start losing value, then some people will maybe disenchanted. That can happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened with the internet. So in the early days of the internet, you needed an expensive modem and you needed an expensive computer. The software was really slow and it was text-based, and you had to open an account with it was really awful to use. Let's face it. I mean, I used it because the same reason I use cryptocurrencies, right? Like, I'm an enthusiast. I love that stuff. But a lot of people don't, and why should they? Well, and the internet got adoption. It got institutional adoption through government and military. Then large information service providers added internet to their portfolio. And then eventually it ate everything, right? It took over the world. For a while, everything was being put on the internet. And I think it's very instructive to look. I mean, it's a very complicated situation, but it's worth looking at exactly how the internet modems got faster, hardware got cheaper, the companies that sold in AOL sent everybody a CD, and all you had to do was put it in your CD-ROM drive. Like, I know that's awful, right? They were good for scaring crows away too. So I don't want to. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, that's how you get that sort of mass retail adoption.
So if we look at the internet took 25 years to come into its own from the time it was launched to where we are today. But the internet didn't have the internet to drive its adoption. Sure. We've got cryptocurrencies, which is a much bigger revolution, and cryptocurrencies do have the benefit of internet and high-speed communication. How long do you think it is before before they use cryptocurrencies more often than they use fiat? Any guesses?
Because now we are in the early age of the blockchain, but so we cannot to imagine a few years ago we can to use Bitcoin and to buy anything in Japan and in the United States. But now and in most of the shops in Japan, and you can pay by the Bitcoin. So this is a challenge. This is a change of the payment of the means. So I do believe the day and for everyone to use Bitcoin to payment is not too far. Because nowadays we have the smartphone, so we have the environment to pay by the cryptocurrencies.
Steve, I can see you wanna contribute here. How long is it going to be?
We actually have a very interesting case running right now in a city called Milan in Italy. We got around 140 different small stores, servicemen, etc. They're all united by one enthusiast in Italy, and now they're trading on our currency, which is called GByte. We certainly knew that there should be economic reason for doing that, and there is also, as it was mentioned here, simplicity in using it. So you can open your phone, send. If you don't have a wallet, I can send you text coins. You can receive them and obviously claim them and then do whatever you want to do. So we do run some cases that actually show that cryptocurrency is viable in the real world and can be used.
I want to leave some time for questions and answers. We've got about 5.5 minutes left. So quickly, in 10 seconds each, I just want one answer from you guys. How long before the population use cryptocurrencies over fiat currencies? I just want a number in years, months, days.
Sorry, my first answer is not a number. I think we may move to transferring assets before we adopt making payments on a global scale.
Great.
I think using over fiat is very, very far off, but I would say significant use in just a couple of years.
Ren?
I think that will truly happen, but depends on several factors, including the legal environments. There's cryptocurrency, ATM in Japan.
Quick answer, just number of years.
Yeah, so it
year,
depends on legal environments of different countries.
Bo?
For me, and I think there are many ways, and we have many different talking, so that is coming soon. You can too have a talking of the exercise.
These guys are all politicians. Not a single one of them has answered my question. Stephen, can you answer my question?
You need someone with
simple.
a crystal ball.
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
There you go.
At least he's putting his head out there.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. Anything you think we didn't cover, anything you'd like to ask the panelists, anything you'd like to ask me. Here we are. We still got 5 minutes. I'll repeat the question if you can hear it. Okay, so the question is to David, and it's specifically around the Lightning Network. Why do you focus specifically around Lightning Network being the game changer?
Because Bitcoin's challenge is to find a use case, and the use case of a store of value, I don't think that that's going to work by itself. I think you need a store of value that can also be a means of exchange at minimum. Bitcoin has some limitations, making it not a very good means of exchange just because of the transaction volume that it can handle. Bitcoin Cash can handle higher transaction rates on-chain. But if on-chain volume doesn't matter because you have this layer 2 scaling that works spectacularly, then it can be a store of value and a means of exchange. So I don't know how well Lightning's going to play out, but I think Bitcoin has kind of, at least for now, it looks like it's sort of bet its success on Lightning being able to scale it as a means of exchange.
David, a question from me. What's the biggest holding in your crypto portfolio other than XRP?
Bitcoin.
Just wanted to make sure. Eddy, the biggest holding in your portfolio other than Bitcoin? Ethereum. Run, other than your tokens, if you've got a token, your biggest holding in your crypto portfolio?
Bitcoin.
Bo?
Bitcoin.
G-Byte.
Other than G-Byte?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Man's all in.
Over here.
Yeah, I have one question. So if we think about fiat money or money at all, it's just a representation of value, right? And this is done by consensus. And now in the last 100 years, now the representation has become the value itself. Do you think that blockchain can change that, and instead of transactioning and exchanging values, representation of values, we can exchange the value itself or the assets itself that it represents?
I would say exactly, you nailed it. I mean, that's what changed, right? What's the difference? We have digitized fiat, right? It can transfer in seconds. I can go on my bank and I can give money to other people who bank at that same bank in seconds, right? What is transformationally different is that you can move the actual value, and it can be between someone in the United States and someone in Pakistan. It doesn't matter. That is the thing that has changed. That's why the use case that we focused on is settling payments, because that's what's hard, right? It's easy to adjust numbers around. The problem is now you've left a mess because you haven't moved the actual value. So I think you nailed exactly what's different about Bitcoin compared to previous systems. And why is that? It's because of the lack of a counterparty. That's what makes it the actual value rather than just a claim against someone.
Yeah, my quick take on that is that we're talking about transferring money, transferring value between different countries, and of course I agree that cross-border payments are much easier with crypto. We all know that. We all use it as well for that. But I think this whole programmability, if we can say like this, is going to make to be a big game changer. The fact that money is not only a value anymore, and it's also you can have these new features of money. So, for example, as we all know, with smart contracts, there are some incentivization mechanism, and the value can change along the way based on different inputs through oracles or other, and then basically it creates a very new dimension for money, I think, in the way we use it.
We've got time for one more question. If we can take one more question from the audience, if anyone's got a question. Going once. Where do we see your show around? CNBC, there's a YouTube site called CNBC space crypto space trader, CNBC crypto trader. If you live in Africa or English-speaking Middle East, we are broadcast on DSTV channel 410 Thursday nights at 20:30.
It's a great show.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.